Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hope with Hulda, Stories of Challenge and Triumph. Today, I will be talking to a very special woman, Mrs. Pat. Is it Mrs. or Miss? I always get confused.
Both.
Both. Okay. Pat Furlan, who is the founder and CEO of PPMD, Project. Oh my God, I can never say that. Can you say that for me?
Yes, Parent Project Muscular Dystrophy.
Thank you, Pat.
PPMD. It's easier.
Oh my gosh. Already I'm mixing up, so sorry about that. But she is someone that really, for me, was the first faces that I connected with Duchenne because I went on the PPMD website and I saw the letter from Pat to all the newly diagnosed Duchenne parents. And it was such a wonderful letter, and it gave me hope and just, okay, there's hope. So for me, it was a wonderful thing to see at the beginning of this journey, which is a difficult journey. And she has done so many wonderful things and has inspired me in so many ways that I wanted to chat with her a little bit and learn about her story. So welcome, Pat. Thank you so much for doing this with me.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh,
it's really a pleasure to be with you and watch you. Thank you,
Hulda. So much. Thank you so much. So if we just start, can you tell us a little bit about Pat Furlan? Who is Pat Furlan? Where did she come from?
Oh, it's funny. When I look at old pictures, I wonder who she was way back then, too. So I spent my career in medicine, right? I was in long ago when women started going to college. I was one of the first women in my family to go to college. Wow. And so when I went to college, I wanted to be in medicine, to be fair, and I was going to be a doctor. But my father, who was very German, said to me, girls aren't doctors, right? So I chose that because that was the philosophy. And my father would never go to a female doctor, no matter what. If he was here today, he would still probably have the same idea.
Yeah. That was the time back then, yeah.
Yeah, it was that philosophy, right? And he was, from Germany, and his family was from Germany, and it was a very male dominant society. So I went into nursing, and I went into a very small college in Cincinnati, Ohio, called Mount St. Joseph College. And I studied nursing. And I have to say, I'm not very studious, although I did well in science because it was natural to me. It made sense to me, and medicine makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. So I started my career in nursing. I went up to Ohio State University to get a master's degree. And while there, I worked in the intensive care unit because I liked I liked high risk science. I liked high risk medicine. I liked critical care. And so I spent years in the intensive care unit at Ohio State. Mm-hmm. When I married Tom, a physician, we moved to another small city in Ohio called Akron, and he was doing his residency there, and I started in renal dialysis. So I started with a nephrologist called Dr. Donald Eiper, and we began he was in dialysis, but this was at a time when dialysis was an in-center. You were admitted to the hospital overnight for your renal dialysis, but it was bankrupting people. And so at the same time, when people had $1 million cap on their insurance, and so when that was quickly, if you're admitted to the hospital every week for 2 days, that you quickly reached the $1 million cap. And within 18 months, patients were bankrupt because they were then paying for dialysis or dying. Dr. Eiper and I grouped together with some people in Washington, and at the same time, coincidentally, Senator's son overdosed and went into renal failure, so needed dialysis. And the senator, so it was kind of coincidental. This all happened together, and we were able to. The senator introduced legislation to make dialysis an outpatient event. So then we were doing patients, they would come in the morning, they would be dialyzed. So I learned advocacy, right? I learned about the law, right? And how laws get passed and written and made. And so I thought that was interesting because I think so many of us sit at home and think we can't make change, right? Yeah. So with Dr. Eiper and many, many others, we wrote laws. And laws got passed, which was pleasantly surprising. And these patients were then not going bankrupt when they were on renal dialysis. We sent our transplants up to the Cleveland Clinic. So we did the chronic renal dialysis at Akron General. And then following that, we moved to Middletown, Ohio, a small city in Ohio, because we wanted to be near family. At the same time, Tom wanted to be in one hospital and not many hospitals seeing patients. So we moved to Middletown. And at the time in education at the hospital, there was no instruction about childbirth, Lamaze, early pediatrics, and I'm not in pediatrics. And I was sick me actually, so I was much more content or feel capable with adults. But Tom asked me to teach childbirth at Middletown Hospital. Sorry. So I teamed up with another woman, Sandy Simpson, and she taught me how to teach childbirth because she was a pediatric nurse. And together we had a partnership where we taught childbirth classes. So I learned about education. And the first childbirth class, which you'll laugh, because I had no teaching experience. So this man walks in and his wife is pregnant. And he said to me, I don't know if this is good for prime time. He said to me, "So I'm really worried about having sex with my wife because I'm worried that the baby will come." And I was like, oh, I don't know. So much for my education, right? So I learned, and we started teaching education at the hospital, and I learned what the questions that people ask that are surprising sometimes, and sometimes you don't have answers. And at the time I was like, wow, I don't think that's true, but I don't know if it's true. And then I began researching and thinking about education. So I went from critical care to renal dialysis and whole organ transplantation, and then into education, and found that I loved that educational interaction. So that's where I am.
Wow. So right away you got into the advocacy.
I did. I knew about advocacy. I knew about advocacy and getting drugs. We had a heparin shortage at the time. We had to figure out where to get heparin. And I learned about, my husband used to say, easeling my way around to get what I needed for those patients. And that's what I learned well.
Well, okay, that helps me understand you a lot. Yeah, I can understand where you're coming from now. So had you ever heard the word Duchenne before your son were diagnosed?
So somewhere in my career, keep in mind, pediatrics was not my favorite thing when I was going through school, because I had a pediatric rotation, of course, at Cincinnati Children's Hospital, which I'm very familiar with. And I recall having a child with a terminal cancer, and I was to take care of that child all day. So it turned out my care involved me sitting in a rocking chair and holding that little child, and then sitting with the mom and holding both of them. And I didn't provide any medical care. I just provided my body just to sit next to them and keep them warm. And I really, it was so crushing that I didn't want to do pediatrics. So if I heard Duchenne muscular dystrophy during my pediatric rotation, I didn't remember it. But when we have 4 children, and we had 2 daughters, Jenny and Michelle. Jenny was the oldest, 2 years apart. So Jenny was 0, 2, 4, and 6. And when I had Patrick, as I saw Chris grow, he was older than Patrick by 2 years. I wondered that he didn't seem as strong as the kids on the street. Yeah. And then when I had Patrick, neither of them looked as strong as the kids on the street. So I kept asking questions like, why aren't they jumping off the couch? Why aren't they running up the steps? Why aren't they crazy like those little 2 boys across the street? And then I would reassure myself and say, like, we just have a calmer household. I'm a mom that likes calm. So I try to reassure myself, but all the time I had this gnawing thing in the pit of my stomach that said, you're A, not the best mom in the world. B, you're not a calm household. And C, you're a crazy woman that everyone should be crazy in your house, including you. So I knew something was wrong. So I went to doctor after doctor, right? And we did physical therapy, and we did this and we did that, but it never. So my husband played football for Notre Dame. So he's a big guy, right? And the docs would say to me, you're like a nervous mom, right? Because they're going to grow into those big muscles. And I would say to them, but they're not muscles, right? Yes, the boys are going to be big boys, but that's not what we're looking at here. And they say you are neurotic and crazy and you don't like pediatrics. And all that was true. Neurotic and crazy and I don't like pediatrics. But there was something fundamental here. that was not right.
Wow, I can relate so much, and probably many parents out there, exactly to what you're saying. I went through exactly that. I mean, I'm a kindergarten teacher, and I had twins, and they had been very active, and I was thinking the exact same thing as you. Is just a quiet baby. I'm just lucky because he was my latest. I was 38 when I had him, and I was like, oh, he's just a quiet little calm baby, and it's okay. But always this gnawing feeling, exactly like you're describing. Yeah. So
right? You know what you know.
Exactly. I know exactly what you're talking about. So what was it like back then? I mean, there was no Duchenne community and little knowledge about the disease. It must have felt overwhelming. Do you remember your first thoughts after hearing the doctor's diagnosis and what was going through your mind?
Well, it was incredibly lonely back then. And so at that time, to make a formal diagnosis, you were admitted to, I was admitted to Cincinnati Children's, both boys, right? And it was a 3-day admission to get a formal diagnosis. And I was really angry because I said, why are we doing this, right? We already know a diagnosis. Keep in mind, you couldn't do a genetic diagnosis back then. Yeah. So we went through a series of procedures at the hospital, including an EMG, which is an electromyogram where they stick a needle in a muscle to check the nerve, right? Mm-hmm. And so when they did that without anesthesia to my little 4-year-old and 6-year-old, I was yelling at them because the person who was doing the test was saying they just have to gut up and take a deep breath. And well, I must say I fell apart and yelled at everyone. But I said, this has no bearing on this disease because it's not a nerve disease, right? Why are you testing their nerve innervation? Well, okay. So I recall then one night being sitting in their hospital room, and it was dark, and they were asleep, and I had my head down, and I must have been praying, and the one of the fellows came in. And she said to me, what are you doing? And I said, I'm praying for a miracle. And she said to me, that's never going to happen. You need a psychiatrist. And she said, and you're going to need medicines. And I said, so, okay, if you give me medicines to do whatever, then what happens when I stop them? Is the situation changed? Do the medicines fix this disease? Or what are you asking of me? So you might imagine from that particular person, I was not happy. In addition to the fact that at Cincinnati Children's, the physician that her boss, essentially, a neurologist who diagnosed my sons, said to me, you just take them home, wrap your arms around them, and watch them die. So
it breaks my heart that it was like that.
Except that I'm a get even kind of a person. And I looked at him and I said, so if anyone dies today, I would like it to be you. And he called my husband because they were colleagues, because this neurologist also came to Middletown, Ohio, because we didn't have our own neurologist. And he told my husband I was crazy. And I think my husband probably said, yes, she is. Don't cross her. And then in my head, I said to myself, you are not going to be in charge of this clinic for very long. And that was my first promise to myself, that this doc was going to do something else as opposed to meet with parents with this diagnosis.
I can imagine those feelings exactly. Wow, it's such a harsh, the way things work back then is so harsh. It's just, imagine saying that to a parent, go home and hold your children until they die. It's just unfathomable. I can't even think about that. It's just horrible. Wow, I'm a little bit emotional hearing that. Why did you decide to start PPMDM? Or was it hard getting people on board on that?
Well, first of all, there was nothing, right? Most of the care was exactly like that person described to me, right? Go home. There isn't anything. The steroid studies hadn't even begun at that moment. So there were no clinical trials of any kind during that time. Mm-hmm. The gene had just been cloned, so we knew that there was a gene. We knew there was a protein product. First of all, at the time, we didn't have the internet. Mm-hmm. I had to order all the publications in. So I ordered the publications, and the articles that were published, weren't that many of them. I would read them at night and sob the rest of the night. And so what I decided was I wanted to know who these people were. At the time, they wouldn't see crazy parents, right? They weren't, you can't walk into a major lab and say, I'm a parent, tell me what you're doing. So I sort of impersonated postdocs looking for a job. So I went around pretending I was somebody else, looking for a job. And I really wanted 5 questions answered. What do you know? How well is this disease characterized? Where's the money? Is industry here? And what's the government do, right? And then my last question was the 6th question is, what's the standard of care here? What to do right now that we're kids? And I found that no one had any answers. So after going to see all these people, I went to the University of Pennsylvania where Lee Sweeney was. He certainly is a major player in the field. And I sat in his office, and he kept looking at me and saying, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm, Entrest disease." And he said, "Why?" And he kept just asking me why. And then I started crying. And he said, "Okay, that's what I figured. That's who you are." We then had a small meeting, and we met with the people I had seen, right? And we asked what needed to be done and what could be done. And this really followed my own personal, I met John Davidson from Jesse's Journey and Donna Sacamano from New York. I met other parents because there was several publications around myoblast transfer, the idea of giving an immature muscle cell, injecting it into muscle with the idea that it would integrate into those cells and make them better. Well, we learned that it's not a feasible way to treat this disease in terms of every single muscle. So we met down there, right? And we all sort of in our own little world said, we can do something. We had this first meeting. I had a meeting with the investigators I met before I even went to Memphis. And what I asked them is what is needed. And they said, we don't have these centers of excellence. There's not groups working together. The field is not seated. So there's
sorry, guys. The connections.
And there's no standard of care. So there's 3 things, right?
Yeah. Wow. And how did you come by that name, Parent Project Muscular Dystrophy, PPMD? Is that something?
Well, first of all, it's not very creative, and we've thought about changing it all the time, right? Because we're not just parents anymore. There's lots of guys, us, and so we've reviewed this. But to be honest, way back then, when I started there, we were, the Muscular Dystrophy Association existed to be Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy Research. That's what we started out as. Mm-hmm. And people were angry because I got legal letters from other places that said, you're trying to confuse the field. And I wasn't, I was just starting something. So when I got legal letters, when we had 0 money in the bank, and 0 ability to fund research, and I get a legal letter that says we're going to sue you if you don't change your name, I said, we're parents. We'll be PPMD.
Well, yeah,
just PPMD like that.
PPMD is good. Yeah, I like PPMD though.
So it was not creative. It was not well thought out. It was just that I didn't want to spend money on legal fees, and I still don't like spending money on legal fees. Yeah. So I just said we're PPMD, and that's who we are. Yeah. And after 25 years, people know us as PPMD. They know us as a thoughtful organization that is trying to drive the development of therapies. Yes. So that's who we are.
But how many people was it that started it with you? Were you only a handful?
There were 2 of us, Donna Sacamano and myself. And Donna was from New York. We had met in Memphis, Tennessee, and we said, we're going to do something. And we didn't know what something was, but we thought we can do something.
Imagine that, 2 people, and look where we are today.
I know.
It must feel surreal sometimes.
Well, you said, earlier, everything happens for a reason. I think everything does happen for a reason. Yes. And every single day I think of my sons, and every single day I think about what can we do to make this field better, to drive it faster, to improve life today and life tomorrow, and ensure a long, healthy life. So it's funny because I have been saying this same prayer since I heard this diagnosis. And there are days when I throw up my hands because things go wrong or get frustrating or whatever.
Yeah.
And since my boys were diagnosed, I try to walk every day, 3 to 5 miles. And on my walk, I was yelling at them, which I periodically do in my head. I said, this is so crazy. Now we have a pandemic and we don't even have 2 nickels to rub together. And this is horrible. And, in my head, I was screaming and yelling about what I saw was wrong with the world. And as I rounded the corner, there were 2 nickels on the ground.
Oh my gosh. Are you?
Yeah,
wow.
2 nickels.
I got goosebumps right now, actually. Wow. That is truly funny. I have no words for that. Wow. That is saying something. Wow. That must be so much away. Yeah, wow.
It was very funny. I picked them up and I brought them home. And, as you say, I had spent about 5 miles yelling at myself and the world and the pandemic and this not going well or that not going well. Or
wow, talk about science.
I know, right?
Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously you're very motivated and passionate. And what is it that, drives you, motivates you the most? What inspires you? What are you passionate about? Obviously this, of course, but
I'm passionate about Duchenne. I'm passionate about life and that we're given so many minutes here on earth and they have to be the best minutes ever, right? Yeah. So I think that improving care today and making sure every boy, regardless of geography, resources, finances, culture, has the best care possible today. Mm-hmm. And then to drive the delivery of therapies, right? When we think about those early days and our first investment was because after that meeting with the investigators, they said we need centers of excellence, right? We need collaborative efforts of people working together. So our first investment was the Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy Research Center at the University of Pittsburgh. That was for cell and gene therapy under the direction of Eric Hoffman, right? Eric had very little money then, and we added to that little bit of money that he had. We knew he had to grow it. The second DMDRC, Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy Research Center, was out at UCLA, and that was to look at inflammation. So we were looking at the downstream and the upstream of dystrophin, right? And the downstream of what happened. So UCLA under Jim Tidball and Melissa Spencer, who's there now, still working in that downstream, and Melissa's research has expanded dramatically. So we had those 2 pieces basically of this puzzle put together in terms of a center of excellence to fully characterize the disease. And then you say to yourself, okay, you can raise money as much as you can raise and you can put it on these 2 different things, but you have to leverage money, right? You have to make sure that there's an environment for more money, bigger money. Mm. So then we went to Washington, right? Because I'd been there before. I know how laws are made. Mm. So we wrote a piece of legislation called the Muscular Dystrophy Care Act. That was our third investment, was to hire in the United States, it's professionals, or called lobbyists in Washington. And we have the same lobbyists today, Faegre, Baker, and Daniels, and now it's Faegre and Drinker. But these group of people, we walked into their offices and with Joel Wood and said, we need a piece of legislation. So we wrote it called the MD Care Act. And what did it have, right? Exactly what we knew: centers of excellence, standards of care, and a research plan. So that was introduced into the House and Senate in the United States in 2001. And to be honest, next year is our 20th anniversary of this piece of legislation. So it was introduced, it was signed into law that December. And from then until now, we have more than $800 million investment. That's leverage, right? That's growing a field. And so the little seeds we planted, and they're people we know, right? They're people you know today, like Stan Frainer at the University of Washington. We funded him. We did the fellowship for Nick Whitehead. Now they have a company, right, that's been invested in. Eric Hoffman, Reverigen, Lee Sweeney, cardiac delivery to the heart, Melissa Spencer, CRISPR-Cas. We did all the seeding way back then. They were little seeds and little money.
Yeah, but that's what it takes. Yeah, that's what it takes.
Yeah. And, and our first DMDRC was Zhao Zhao, who was a virologist who joined Ask Bio, who was with Jude Samolsky. We also funded Jude, who became Ask Bio Bamboo, sold to Pfizer gene therapy, right? That's where that came from. Wow. So when you think about the little seeds, and research is built on seeds that grow, and the investment today is is collective, right? It's not just PPMD's investments, it's the NIH, it's every foundation that mentions Duchenne muscular dystrophy has given money somewhere to somebody to grow a seed to get us where we are.
Yeah,
right?
I can feel your passion so strongly. And as you know, as the hope grows, I mean, your passion must be just growing also, right? And you can see all the results
when I can see results, right? We just had the Pfizer presentation, and Sarepta's on gene therapy, and certainly the exon skipping therapies, and many of the downstream in terms of, you know, steroid replacement therapies with the catabasis drug or the Riveragen drug or the Givinostat doesn't replace steroids, but all these to look at the upstream. Now we can get dystrophin expressed, even if it's a teeny bit for some mutations, or a smaller form. And now we're trying to put dystrophin back, which makes perfect sense. And then looking at downstream, and then the heart, right? The heart is a muscle too, and we can't forget it. We have to protect it and make sure that that heart, you know, one of the questions is if you make these kids give them the ability to walk until they're 25, is the heart going to be able to do that, right?
Exactly.
We were just at FDA seems like a lifetime ago in February. We met with FDA for about 2 hours, and we talked about, is the heart built to last? Can we make sure that that heart is built to last? And that, you know, the gene therapies are having targets in the heart as well. So this is a complicated disease, but it's not a hopeless disease. It's a disease that we can maximize so that all these boys live long lives so that they can take care of their old parents, you know? So that's what we want. We want these independent guys, and that's where we're going. And so there'll be a day that boys that are diagnosed never get into this no hope and no help business. That they're always, well, here's your diagnosis, here's the mutation, here's your next steps.
Yes, that's a wonderful dream to have, So I wanted to ask you, do you have any mentors or people that you look up to? Who are your inspirations that have given you?
Well, I have lots of people. Frankly, I have my parents, because they were from Germany. They came to the United States thinking that, you know, the roads were paved of gold, right? Some people think that. And they're not. Those aren't the roads that we have. But my father's company was a company called Shell Leather Goods, and he and his brothers and his father before him made the first doctor bags. So it's that old doctor bag you see on Western movies that opens up, that the docs carry. That was my dad's, right? Really? And so my dad making those doctor bags and owning that company kind of thought he was a doctor, by the way. He, you know, by osmosis, I suppose. But he was a really hard worker, and he worked nonstop. And my mom and dad cared deeply about their family, and taught me that, you know, you just keep your nose down and you keep going forward, even if there's chaos and noise around you or frustration around you. You keep walking, and you find the 2 nickels, right? So, you know, I've always believed that hard work is important. And you have to love what you do, or it doesn't matter, right? Yes. And so I love medicine. I still love medicine, and I have to say I was disappointed in it when my sons were diagnosed. Disappointed that it wasn't magic, but it's, you know, I think of Duchenne as equal parts. It is heartbreaking, but it's also a fascinating disease. You know, when you look at muscle and what it can do for you, and you look at different sizes of people and see how that muscle works, and you look at the Usain Bolts, and you look at his muscle fibers compared to other muscle fibers, and you say to yourself, there's a difference in those fibers, and how does that work, right? Exactly. So I think it's equal parts heartbreaking, frustrating, and scientifically fascinating.
All together in one.
All mixed together, and on certain days it's more heartbreaking and more frustrating than it is fascinating. You'd like it to be a little less fascinating, right?
Yeah. I understand. I hear what you're saying. And what I wanted to ask you also, have you ever felt overwhelmed, or, you know, just lost hope altogether and wanted to give up? Have you had a moment like that? Maybe many?
I still have many moments like that, right? And I usually open the door and go outside and take a walk.
Yeah, take a walk. That's it. Okay. And that brings me to my next question, actually. Like, what are the things that you do to take care of you? Do you meditate, spend time with family, take walks, practice self-care in any way? What does it we do to keep going.
So when the boys were diagnosed, and this person came in the door and said I needed help because I was crazy and mentally ill, which was interesting, right? Yeah. I said that she was right. I was really struggling, and so way back then, I found a friend, and he was a psychologist, a PhD in psychology and religious studies, a dual PhD. I am very fond of higher education. And so I met on a weekly basis with this man by the name of Ken Howard. He's out of practice by now. And I could go scream at him and scream at him easier than I could scream at home. I also, on the side of our house, we built our house. We've been here for 40 years. And I only wanted ever one house that could be home. I didn't want to go from one house to another house. So I said to my husband, just build a house that's adequate and we stay. And on the side, and I'm not really certain as we built the house, why we put steps and a door into a place that neither opened ever. But it's basically, we have some land. And so I sit on those steps and I used to cry and drink my Diet Coke, which is also for my mental health. My boys used to say, have your nerve medicine, which is a Diet Coke. And the only rule of behavior in my house was don't drink her last Diet Coke. And so there had been days when they went and borrowed money from neighbors and sent them to the store to get a Diet Coke if they drank my last Diet Coke. And I find walking and thinking is really important to me. And maybe that's meditation, or maybe that's prayer. Or maybe that's just getting out into space and giving my head some space. So those are the things that I do, and I do them frequently. I also am I love art. I love design. I love dress. So there are days that I just go to a museum and stare, or I go to even a dress shop and look at designs because I like design. I like how people display themselves. So I really am a very visual learner. And so I like to be out and looking visually at flowers or materials, or that really makes me happy. So whenever I'm giving up, which is not frequently, but there are days when we all say,
we're human, right?
The world's ending and I'm going to, my mother used to say to me, stop the world, I'm getting off. So that's kind of in my head. When I get to stop the world, I'm getting off, I have to go outside.
Okay, I hear you on that. Thank you for sharing that. And where do you draw your strengths from?
I draw my strengths from my family and from my boys, right? And from my parents before me. I know how hard my father worked to make that company go. I know I know how hard my husband worked in medicine, and I know the care he gave to the patients he cared for. So I think and my daughters and sons. So my little son, I remember when he was in my kitchen and it was just after the diagnosis, and he saw me crying and he said, "Why are you crying?" And I said, "I just want magic. I want out of here into the life that we had planned." And he said, "You're not very special that you get magic." Just like that. And he said, if you're not, you can't have magic for me and not anybody else. If you're going to get magic, then it has to be for everyone, because it's just not fair and you're not special. Wow. So I think that I've drawn my certainly from prayer, from family, and this whole community gives me strength. When I see what people do and what they're going through, in the pandemic, when we see so many people have lost jobs, when I see families without resources, when I see single parents that are struggling with one or two children, that gives me strength. That gives me fight to say, we have to work together to solve these issues. Yeah. When I meet parents from other countries, I think I mentioned to you the dad from the Middle East who said, I don't have anything, right? We can't fix everyone in the world right now. But as we have therapies, we need to make sure that they're accessible. And so I draw strength from this community. I find, we have our grumpy mom and dads. We have our, disgruntled aunts and uncles. It's a family, right? So you're going to see, and people sort of judge, she's the crazy one. She's the fun one. We all are going to have That's a family, right?
Yeah.
I had a crazy Aunt Mary who, and a lovely Uncle Harry, right? And they were a little bit crazy, but wonderful human beings. And so I think when I look at this community, all of them, I think wonderful human beings, and I draw strength there. And I think that when we all come together, we can do magical things.
I hear you on that. Yes, for sure. I was wondering if you could share with us, what are the accomplishments you're most proud of in regards of your work in the Duchenne community?
Oh gosh. Well, first of all, I'm proud that this, the idea that Donna Sacamano and I had so many years ago was a good idea, right? It didn't fall on its face.
I agree with you on that.
And advocacy makes sense. And I think that the other good thing is instilling confidence in others that their voice is going to be heard. I think that when we get a diagnosis like this, you worry that you don't have a voice, right? And if you even raise your voice, it won't matter. I think that we have been able collectively to agree that each individual voice matters and collectively our voice matters.
Yes.
I think that starting seeding, right, with fellowships and the little tiny grants that we gave, Nick Whitehead, Nick Whitehead, Johnny Huard, Eric Hoffman, Lee Sweeney, Ann Frainer, Jem Tidball, Melissa Spencer, and I could name loads of others that we gave small grants to. I hope that was a seed, or one of the seeds that helped plant where they've become.
Yeah.
I think that legislation and advocacy is so critically important. Not only the dollar investment in NIH, the NIH investment, we have a congressionally directed medical research program at the Department of Defense. That's because of advocacy. It was each year $3.2 million, a small amount of money, and I'll cheer for Ohio because it.
I'm sorry, guys.
The Ohio contingent begged them for more money. It went to 10 million, right? Your voice counts. And this time, as I say, we were lucky enough to have it in Ohio, and we know those folks pretty well. The voice has been instrumental. Certainly that leverage of investment. I think the other thing that's beautiful is, we have loads of other foundations that are doing lots of things. St. Joseph is, there's so many other foundations because somebody said, some people ask me, why are there so many foundations? I said, because this is not a simple or inexpensive problem, right? This is a huge, complicated disease. And the more people, the more money, the more opportunity we take in this.
Yeah.
And everyone has different.
I'm sorry.
You're going to have some failures. I mean, the Domagrosumab study failed, right? Some studies are going to fail. We don't like it. They take time, our son's participation, but some things just don't work. And that's hard. Some of the studies before this didn't work, right? We know that. But then you make progress. So you take where we can come together. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud of our advocacy. I think that's amazing. I think the leverage of money there was and is incredible. They'll soon announce new Wellstone centers. Those are 5-year grants. We'll see those announcements pretty soon. That's advocacy, right? Yeah. That MD Care Act was passed in 2001. It was reauthorized in 2008, and it was reauthorized in 2014 again. And when it was reauthorized, we had a sundown clause in it that meant it's always going to be there. So that legislation won't go away. So muscular dystrophy research will be a factor in NIH forever, which is amazing, right?
Yeah, really. It's a wonderful accomplishment that you have done with PDMD.
I'm also proud of the care, right? Because my sons were diagnosed at Cincinnati Children's. The physician that diagnosed them shouldn't have been in muscular dystrophy. And maybe my opinion is he shouldn't have been in medicine at all. And maybe as a neurologist, he saw so many bad things that he just couldn't get past them. But this is a sort of a funny story. In my head, as I told you, I wanted him gone. So we were able to, way back then, before PPMD was firmly established and in making progress, we were able as a family to meet with Cincinnati Children's and say, that guy has to go, right? And at the time, there was this other person that was a neurologist that had just spent 6 or 8 weeks with Victor Dubowitz, a very famous neurologist in the UK, and her name was Brenda Wong. And so we said, make her the lead, right? And they did at Cincinnati Children's. Again, a seed, right? So we removed this other person that was horrible in terms of diagnosing and delivering hope, and we put in Brenda Wong. And look where she is.
Wow.
Now, right? So again, a seed. So I'm very proud of that seed and very proud of the money we invested to make Cincinnati Children's a premier institution.
I'm sorry, it keeps freezing up, guys. I don't know.
To go. You shouldn't have to travel miles to get good care.
Yeah, today is much better for people. Sorry, you froze up a little bit. I couldn't hear all of it, but thank you for that, Pat. And as we get to the end, I have a couple more questions. It's so nice to talk to you. The time just flies by. Oh my gosh, and I lost Pat. I'm hoping she's going to come back. Well, this is what I was talking about. You're back. This is what I was talking about. It's not going to be perfect. Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry. Yes. This is what I was saying. It's not going to be perfect, but well, I will figure something out how to use a better program that will do this. So I wanted to ask you, is there anything you would have done differently looking back? Do you have any regrets or anything like that? Are you there, Pat?
Oh, gosh. Would I have done things differently? Yeah. Can you hear me, Hulda?
Yes.
Am I back?
Yeah.
Hello?
You're back. Yeah, I can hear you.
Back. Done things differently. So, I guess there are things if I thought about it. But I think looking back, I now have more information. I might, with the information I have now, of course, going back, we might have done things a little differently and perhaps a little smarter. But we used what we had, I think, to make decisions that we thought were the best possible. I have to say, some of the decisions you make go right into the wall, right? It's very frustrating. It's heartbreaking. And you think, crap, I didn't want that to go into the wall. Yeah. At the same time, we all take a step backward, right? And then we have to go forward. So I might, in retrospect, I might have called us something different instead of getting frightened by lawyers 25 years ago. I might have said, forget it. I'm going to call it whatever. Mm-hmm. But we made the best decision we could given the circumstances, given where we were. Mm-hmm. So, I think there's, I think there's not a rare disease nonprofit that says with a lot more money, I would do a lot more things. Mm. I think that it's much more, it is certainly about money, but it's also about people, and it's also about advocacy, and it's also about understanding, looking at gaps, trying to analyze what do we know, what don't we know, because the more we learn sometimes in this disease, the more we find we don't know, right? What accounts for the variability in 2 11-year-olds with the same mutation, one who walks for a long time and one who doesn't? Can we figure that out? Can we preserve muscle fibers in a different way? Can we do things better? I think that the more we look, the better we become together. Yeah. And I think that right now, PPMD has the PPMD Adult Advisory Committee, and we have these adults that some of those on that, they're all amazing men who are living independent lives, driving, going to school, going to college. Some are married. And you say, if you can get one to be that adult, right, then you can get more. And so I think we are on this path to hopefully seeing approvals of many therapies. I am hopeful to still stand up the platform study, because I think that we could really look at the downstream much more quickly, fewer exposed to placebo, save time, which is what we need to do, is save time, preserve muscle, preserve those hearts, and encourage independence, right?
Yeah, so exactly. That's very true. Like I said, as we draw to the end, is there something personal you can tell us about you that not many people know about? Something like a hobby, favorite movie, funny, embarrassing thing you haven't told anyone?
I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty open about that. I don't think, I think most people know that I'm addicted to Diet Coke, and I drink 4 or 5 of them a day and sometimes more. And that's probably the worst thing in the whole world. So I don't think there's anything people don't know. I mean, I think maybe the secret I have is my daughter's getting married on August the 8th, and we're going to have a wedding at the beach, and it's going to be fabulous.
Oh, that's awesome. That's wonderful to hear that. Yeah.
Yes. So we're excited about that. And
that's wonderful. I'm happy for you. Yeah.
we're excited. We're excited.
Yeah, I can relate to that. My daughter is only 19, but it's going to be a day that I think all mothers are, it's a special day.
Yes, it is a special day. Yeah. It is a special day. And I think more special will be when I got married long ago, I remember walking into the church with my 3 brothers were there. And I thought, I'd like to freeze this day, and I'd like it to be just all of us together. And then my brother, Jack, who had died when he was very young at 42, he said to me, you can't freeze days. That's, my family used to, so first of all, in my family, no one is called by their real name, right? It was, my brothers were named Rolls and Flub and Deacon, and we called them all different names, and I was Rat, right? Because, for whatever reason. and he just said, Rat, you can't freeze days. You just can't freeze days, because they'll be better and there'll be worse days ahead. And so I think that, for this, on whatever schedule we want. And I think just watching that family of mine grow and develop, and wishing that the 2 boys were there, we'll always have.
Yeah, of course. I understand that we all want to, of course, have those special days. And I say the same thing as you. I would love to freeze the days that are, wonderful in the family. But we just have to hold on to the memories. And, cherish that. So
yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
And sorry. So what is your absolute favorite thing to do when you have some pad time, when you really want to enjoy yourself?
My absolute favorite thing to do is to walk, right? Because in my head, when my boys were diagnosed with Duchenne, and when this physician said they will stop walking, is I said to myself, I will take every single step that they would have taken. So my favorite thing to do is to go outside of my house, go up to the high school, which is maybe a mile away, run up there and get on the track, because the track is mindless, right? It's a circle or it's an oval, and I can just walk and walk and walk. And so my favorite thing is just to clear my head and walk around and think and pray and wish and hope.
That's beautiful. And, that's really beautiful. When you say that, wow, that's really warms my heart to hear you say that. It's very beautiful. What are your hopes and dreams for the future for those living with Duchenne? What do you see happening maybe in the next 5 years?
I see more approvals. So I see some additional approvals. I know we will have many. I am hopeful we will be able to restore dystrophin in many, or provide them a truncated dystrophin or a microdystrophin or something, right? I think if we get dystrophin expression, we have embarked on newborn screening. So the idea is to go to the RUSP with that. So the RUSP is the uniform. So basically in the United States, the RUSP is the federal panel that says that this disease now has a treatment, because that's part and parcel of an approval from the RUSP, and we can do newborn screening. So if we could do newborn screening, we diagnose at birth, and wouldn't it be wonderful to be able to say to this young mom, not wonderful to say you have Duchenne, but to say you have this child has Duchenne, and this is what we're going to do to treat Duchenne, and he would be asymptomatic the rest of his life. So I am hopeful for therapies. I'm hopeful for access to those therapies and a healthcare system that enables that access, rather than having parents fight 18 months to get access to a treatment. I'm hopeful for newborn screening, because I think the earlier you diagnose, the more protection you can give to those fibers in that heart. And I see that hopefully we will see these young men grow up and grow old, and that is the goal, isn't it?
Wow. Yeah, that's a good goal. Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Oh my gosh, I'm old. in 10 years, I hope to be watching this field do extraordinary things.
Do you see yourself still in the battlefields, just...
I won't ever leave the field, I don't think, because I truly love medicine. So I will always be in medicine as long as my brain and my body hold out, mostly my brain holds out. I will be doing something in medicine. I find it fascinating. I find science fascinating. And I find that the education of people to understand medicine and to understand, it's not rocket science, to be fair, but it is a very thoughtful, methodical process to understand it. And I think the more we learn, we're in this explosion of genetics, right? Genetics and biomarkers and individual traits. And I would love to be able to see a system by which we know this child, the mutation, so the right drug for the right child at the right time that really protects and prepares him for a lifetime. So I again am fascinated. I look at I sit on an ethics committee at New York University. So this is called TME. It's looking at pediatric ethics in gene therapy, so that we can make sure that we are ethical as we deliver these treatments, and that people, regardless of their culture, geography, resources, etc., have access. And so I am fascinated by that as well. And I truly love working with Art Kaplan and his group on ethics. And I love working with the PPMD team, and I love working with this community. So hopefully, as long as my brain holds out, I'll be here.
And I think that's so, like we were talking about, Pat, that things happen for a reason. I mean, look at you with all that knowledge you have in medicine, your background and everything. You are exactly the right person for this job. I mean, it's just everything, comes together in you, and you're at this exact place where you were meant to be, I believe. Helping.
I think I'm at the exact place I was meant to be.
Yeah,
I won't disagree. I won't disagree that we're here for a purpose. And I think when the purpose lands in your lap, or when you find your purpose, I think that, again, I'll say it again, we all have a limited period of time on this earth, and to find something you're passionate about and you're willing to concentrate on and move forward in the ways that you can. As I say, there's lots of people moving things forward in the ways that they can. And I think that if it was one magic bullet, it would be easier, one person and a magic bullet, but we know that that isn't the case, right? Yeah. It's all of us together doing the things we know to do.
Yeah, in the best way. It's like the quote. I love the quote by Theodore Roosevelt. I think it's do the best with what you got, with what you can, with what you are.
With what you have. It's do the best with what you do. The best that you can with what you have. Right
where you are. Yes, exactly. Yeah. I love that, and it summarizes pretty much for me this whole journey of the Jen. Really. So
yeah, it does.
Okay, so just two more questions. I think we're over an hour, but it's so nice talking to you. The time just flies.
This is the best Saturday morning ever.
Thank you so much. I love it too. So, what are you most grateful for in your journey? What are the biggest lessons you have learned on the way?
I'm grateful for family. I'm grateful for the faith my parents had in themselves and in the God that they believe in. I'm really thankful and grateful for a community, right? I'm grateful for the community that developed around me and for me, because in the beginning I was pretty alone. And so finding Donna Sacamano and knowing that she was equally crazy and driven as myself. So I think it's finding family. And I don't think the family that we're born in is always necessarily the family that's supportive, right? So I think that we find a family, whether that's the biological family or whether that's an extended family, and we fall into their arms. And I think I'm grateful for those arms that hold me up. I'm grateful for the people that remember my sons. I'm grateful for the people that support our family, and I always will be. And I'm grateful for the family I have. I don't think I would have been me without that family, without those three brothers who knocked me around a good bit, and without the cousins and friends that have also been there for me with open arms. And so I think that that's what I'm most grateful for. And I'm most grateful for the resources that my family had, right? Because we're all born to different circumstances and we are by no means rich. And I don't mean resources in terms of money. I mean resources in terms of my husband allowed me to do this. And I don't mean I asked permission, but I escaped that family a lot, right? And part of it, I say to myself, maybe I couldn't look, and he did a lot, right? So he was here, I was traveling because it was hard. He's never said you can't. When I've last, at the end of the year, I was gone 23 days straight. He's never said don't. He's always been fascinated along with me with medicine. And I am grateful for the support that I've had. And you know what? And the most important thing is that people believed that I could. Because if people around you are saying you can't, then you don't.
I know.
And Lee Sweeney, who's one of my close friends, said to me, you can, and I'm going to be there with you. So I've had so many people who say you can or we can, and we'll be there together. And I think for me, that's the best.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That's so powerful. Exactly. I hear you on that, Pat. I think I may have forgotten one question. Did we talk about already, you know, how has this whole experience changed you? I don't think I asked you that.
Maybe changed me. I think this experience has allowed me to grow, Hulda. I think of myself way back then when I was, first married and we had 4 children, and Tom was a doc and I was teaching at the hospital, and life was easy, maybe hard in terms of managing 4 little kids who were obviously occupied a lot of time. But I hope that I've grown a lot. I hope that I'm much more empathetic than I might have been back then. I hope that I have learned from others about life, and that my view of life is much different than the life that, the small world that I had of my cohesive family that was supportive and kind. I've learned about diversity. I've learned about faith. I've learned a lot about faith, and I've learned a lot about acceptance. Not acceptance of status quo, but acceptance of others and acceptance of other cultures and other philosophies. Yeah. And I've learned that not everything goes well, and you're allowed to say it out loud. That, I screwed up big time and I'm going to try again. So, and I've learned about trust. So, and I've learned from you. I mean, just watching you dance on Friday, honestly, because some days it doesn't feel like there's a reason to smile, and then you bring joy into everyone's life. That's what I've learned. Open yourself up to lots of things, and you'll be better.
We can always find, Duchenne is the hardest thing, and it's devastating, but I don't want to, let it define me. There's always some reason to smile. The little moments, there's always something, even in the hardest situation. I truly believe that. And it's difficult sometimes. You have different, some days are bad, some days are, but you can always, for a little while, smile at something.
There has to be something that brings joy.
Yeah.
And you have to find it every single day.
Yeah. And sometimes you just have to throw everything away, just be in that moment. And that's what the dancing is about. Just forget about, I may have been crying maybe 10 minutes earlier or something, but, we just have to sometimes.
Yeah.
Just
I was yelling and crying, and I found 2 nickels, and it made me laugh. And I thought, oh, for heaven's sake.
Yes. I love that story. I thank you for sharing that with us. So the final question, is there anything you would like to say to people who are listening, or the Duchenne community, or some final words of wisdom?
Final words of wisdom. I'm not sure I have any wisdom. I think that we are a blessing to each other. And I think we have to recognize that. I worry when I see some of these, the whole world seems quite angry, the pandemic, the politics, the, views, and we seem to become vicious to each other sometimes. And I think life's too short, right?
Yeah, right.
I think that we're all different based on where we've come from and what we think and what we have around us. But that doesn't make us bad or good. It makes us a family. And I think that the most important thing is to recognize that family and to be appreciative. We're all together. We've done some amazing things. This world is progressing because of all of us together, right? This world of Duchenne. So I don't think the rest of the world should fail around us. And so I think we should think through that. I wish we would all be more thoughtful. I wish we would all be more kind. I wish we would all know that together we bring something that is extraordinary for our sons and for our families. And frankly, I think our sons are extraordinary. Yes, and I think they're the biggest blessing we have. And I think one really major thing, Duchenne's devastating. When they say that word out loud, it feels like the world crashed. And that cloud occupies every minute, every sentence, every celebration, right? It's there. Mm-hmm. But it's more information on the son you love, right? That's all it is, more information.
Yeah, exactly. And that is information. Yes, I can relate to that very much. Like I was saying in the beginning, when I heard Duchenne for the first time, I was in denial, and I couldn't even go to your website and look up all the information. But when I got over that and just saw it, just like that, you were saying, more information. It was hard, and I had to kind of go slow, but that's what it's about. Exactly. I think
whenever we have something so heavy hit us, we all have to take time. For some people, that's a day. For some people, that's a week, a month, a year. But then you get back up on your feet and you start walking forward, right? Exactly. I think there are times in life when we all have been knocked to our knees or worse. I could tell you things that I've done that knocked me to my knees zillions of times. Yeah. And you have to wait until your knees get strong enough to stand back up. And then you stand and keep going, right?
Yeah. You have to hold on to hope. I think that's the biggest thing to take away from all this. There is hope. And we just have to be strong to hold on to that.
And you're allowed to sit down. You're allowed to sit down and say, I can't do it anymore for a while or for, a long time.
Exactly. Yeah. Be gentle with yourself. You're doing the best you can,
Sit down and let others hold your hand. Yeah. I think that's really important. And to be able to say it out loud, I got to take a breath, right?
Yes. I need help. Yeah, exactly. And there's this final thing that I just popped into my mind as we were talking right now. It's there because I do love quotes, and sometimes a quote will help me during the day. It really will. And just give me a little bit of boost. Is there a favorite quote you have that we could maybe end this conversation with?
Oh gosh, a favorite quote.
Maybe you don't have, it's okay if you don't have one. I just thought of this right now.
I too like lots of quotes. I don't know that I could pick out a favorite one for you at this moment.
No, but that's okay.
But I do like quotes. I think the one, and I probably can't even remember it. It's the one my mother stuck in her Bible. It's hope is the thing with feathers. It sits upon the wall, right? It's beautiful. Yeah, that's one of her favorite quotes, and it was stuck in her Bible. And I will say to you that after my son Chris died, I was looking at his notebooks, and I'm trying to think of what I found stuck to a notebook of his, and it was this little quote that was about Duchenne and about spending moments, and it was, if you can't live a long life, live a good life.
Oh, now you're just going to make me cry. That's really beautiful. Wow. That is beautiful, Pat. Thank you so much for sharing all your story with us. And you are a force to be reckoned with, like I said, and you've done so much for the community, and I can't thank you enough for doing this. And just keep up the good work you're doing, and you shine a light for all of us. So thank you, Pat.
Thank you. Thank you, Hulda, for taking time with me today. It was wonderful.
Yeah, it was wonderful talking to you. And like we said in the dancing video, together we will cure Duchenne.
Yes, we will.
All my love to you. And thank you guys for listening. And
goodbye.
Bye till next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.